Asian people need to sit down. They need to take many seats. Many seats. Now, I ended up having this conversation, or this argument, debate. I left a comment, and the comment blew up because I was watching this news report that had to talk about, that was talking about the Asian people getting this $2 million in non-interest loans because of their pain and suffering because of the coronavirus, and nobody's going to their or catering to their businesses, right? And they're up there whining and crying and fussing and bitching, right? And I left a comment because I've been noticing the type of language that the news has been using when talking about, the passage of these bills. They got one that already passed the House and the Senate, and then they got another one, for the state legislature of New York, right? And it's a Hispanic woman. There's two other Asian women, who are, the Hispanic woman, there's a lot of Asian people in her district. And I've been noticing the language that the media uses that it most certainly doesn't use as it pertains to the black community, which is our Asian communities. Like as though white media and white people have some sense of ownership of the Asian community. Now, we all know how the Asians have been, propped up by the system of white supremacy as the model minority, right? And how, even Asians, they believe and they subscribe to this delusion, right? So it turns into Asians versus black people. And, that's how the system of white supremacy plays. It's real slick. Even though, when you look, they'll talk about Asians and obtaining education and all this other stuff, right? But you notice Asians are underrepresented when it comes to leadership positions, right? That's why they talk about the bamboo ceiling. That's not a term I came up with. That's the term that they call it, the bamboo ceiling. Meaning, yeah, you can be middle management. Yeah, you guys are smart. You guys can do all the calculations and all that shit and everything, but you ain't going to be running shit. You ain't going to be running shit. You can forget about that. But they always seem to overlook that. So anyway, the comment that I left is pretty much what I just said. I'm like, all I said was parentheses, the black community, like them niggas over there. But then when the media is talking about this, we got to help out the Asian community. We got to help out our Asian communities. I'm like, our. There's this sense of they're a part of us too. They're a part of the American society. But whenever they talk about the black community, it's the blacks. It's the black community. It's, them niggas over there. That's how it's referenced, right? So I left my comment, and it got a whole bunch of thumbs up, over 100 thumbs ups, right? And for some reason, the comment just went straight to the top. And so everybody's seeing the comment. All these people are coming in, commenting, right? You got your usual suspects, your white supremacists that want to, that hate everybody, but hate black people more than they hate Asians. And so they come in the comment section and they saying they shit. And this one Asian woman in particular, she came in and she started talking about how Asians are discriminated against, right? And she brought up what I brought up in my last video about this topic, which was the Chinese community being attacked with migrant workers, and she just brought up the migrant workers. I brought up San Francisco and how they purged San Francisco and how the Chinese community was actually compensated for that. There's been plenty of examples of reparations that Chinese and other Asian Americans have received, the Japanese with being thrown in internment camps. There's nobody saying that the Asian community hasn't been discriminated against. And the thing that I find interesting, right, is I go on, I went on, she said another comment that irritated me that I'm going to get to in a second. So I went online and I'm looking for, where has the Asian community and the black community ever formed, Voltron on civil rights? Unfortunately, I have the negative example of Richard Aoki, who was a Japanese mole who was sent in to basically undermine the Black Panthers, which was a part of COINTELPRO, which was the FBI's way of destroying, black revolutionaries and black leadership, right? Although I did find posters and pictures, and you never hear about this. You never hear about this. You don't learn this in school. Whenever they say revolutionaries, whenever they say militancy, whenever they say, the civil rights movement, right? It's always just exclusively black people. However, when you go on Google and you put up Asian civil rights and you click on images, you're going to see there's a lot of images in there where there are Asian Americans, and then, it's either the 1960s or the 1970s. You can tell by the fact that, they have, more westernized, long hairstyles and things like that. And I don't know what was going on, but obviously that was more out there in California than anywhere else. The Black Panthers were out there in California. The Mulford Act was enacted because of the Black Panthers exercising open carry in California, brought about by the FBI, who basically gave Richard Aoki guns to give to the Black Panthers via FBI agent Larry Threadgill. So anyway, so as you I found this picture of this little Asian girl holding up this sign, and the sign said black, something like black power for black people, yellow power for yellow people. Little small Asian girl, right? So you can see where the Asian community was piggybacking off of the black civil rights movement, right? And in comes my major issue. So this Asian chick that came in the comment section brought up Asians being discriminated against when it comes to college admission. Now, this has been a topic of discussion, for the last couple of years, right? Where you had that Indian guy who went off, and I know that Indian is not the same as Far East, but he shaved his head because he was dark skinned and he looked like a black man, and then he tried to use that to leverage himself, enrolled as an African American, right? And there was a whole big stink about that, right? Because nobody's denying the fact that Asians do focus very hard, when it comes to academia and whatnot, and they see that as the great equalizer, just as many African Americans used to see that as the great equalizer, until they realized at the end of the day that, it's not about that. It's not just, it's again, Europeans, white people, they control all the opportunities, and they got to let you in the door. We have black people who saw a generation of black people. They did all that. They conformed. They tried their best to operate within the confines of white society, and white society still gave them their ass to kiss. Same with black men going off and serving in the wars, right? They come back and white folks give them their ass to kiss. I don't recall a whole bunch of Asians going off and fighting in any of these wars to the same degree that African Americans have. And the crazy part, the part that really irritates me about her bringing up the whole thing with the schools and whatnot, and Asians are discriminated when it comes to them enrolling and getting in schools. If it wasn't for the black civil rights movement, Asians wouldn't even be able to go to those schools, just like black people weren't able to go to those schools. So Asians have benefited from the civil rights movement facilitated by black people, and they seem to overlook that. Instead of saying thank you, they running around like they're white or something. I'm like, oh, you've been discriminated against at these universities. Which universities? Oh, please direct me to the HBCU as an Asian person that you applied to and you were denied because you were Asian. Oh, that's right. You're not trying to get into an HBCU. You're trying to get into a predominantly white institution, which you could only go to because it was the blacks who integrated the schools. Oh, you mean that university that you've been discriminated against? Sounds to me you need to take that up with white folks. That's what it sounds like to me. Coming at me with the, oh, well, we're being discriminated against, because we're Asian and we can't get into these schools. When black people, the whole reason they fought for that shit was because they couldn't get into the schools simply based off of the color of their skin. The whole point of the civil rights movement was to correct and rectify the discrimination, the long-standing discrimination that had gone against black people, to try to bring economic parity and equality to black people, But see, the clever thing that the system of white supremacy did is they came through and they started talking about diversity and multiculturalism and everything else, which basically solidified black people not receiving anything or receiving very little and hiding it underneath the guise of, well, this is for all people. All lives matter, right? When it wasn't all lives that was going through this. You got Indian dudes and Asian people who got here yesterday. Whether it's chain migration or whether it's some of the tax exemptions that they get, people who got here yesterday that have received more than black people have received in 350 years. And then these people want to sit there and can't understand why black people are upset. What America owes black people have not received. America has a debt that it has not paid black people nor black people's ancestors, because remember, everything's about legacies and generational wealth. So if you prevent one generation from accumulating wealth, you prevented subsequent generations from acquiring the wealth that was supposed to be built underneath a situation of actual open and free opportunities that don't exist, or most certainly didn't exist for black people. Black people were denied access to the Homestead Act. Black people were denied access to Social Security for the first 20 years. Black people were denied FHA loans, after serving in 2 world wars. They were denied FHA loans when they came back. They were redlined. They were blockbusted. Drugs were dumped into the black community. Then you have the whole situation with the Black Panthers and Richard Aoki and COINTELPRO. Then you have the dumping of narcotics into the black community via the Iran-Contra-ing. Thank you, Oliver North and Ronald Reagan. Then after that, you got the 1994 crime bill, and the mass incarceration of black men. And then the continued discrimination in jobs and employment, right? I mean, we all know how property values and property taxes work, right? The schools that have high property taxes are able to have better teachers, better schools, better facilities, and those kids get a better education. Where with the black kids go to, they live in a poor area, therefore they go to a poor school, therefore they get a poor education, and therefore they're not as able to compete when we want to talk about standardized tests. See, people want to sit there, they want to look at where the black community is now and just, look and see the black people, they don't care about education, right? Which is to a great deal true, right? But how did we get there? We got there based on the fact of the constant stagnation and the lack of economic opportunities that exist in these black communities. Like I said with Philadelphia, these white people, they're on opioids. We need treatment centers. We need compassion. We need understanding. When black people went through their crack era, again, going back to the Iran-Contra-ing and Ronald Reagan that created the crack era, then all of a sudden it's what? Lock them niggas up. Throw them underneath the jail. Make sure they never get out. Bust up their families. And here you got Asians cutting to the front of the line. But we're suffering. They ain't even suffer so much as a month. And they up here bitching and whining, talking about ain't nobody coming and eating our Chinese food. It really goes to show you how much the Asian community is not self-sustainable. How do you go from, we talk about black people not supporting black businesses. How do you go from having a restaurant full of people to now you got 0 people coming into your store to eat your Chinese food? You mean to tell me even Chinese people don't even eat Chinese food? I mean, the bullshit coming out of this woman's mouth. Where was the delegation of Asian lawyers that were sent to Thurgood Marshall to help him with the Brown versus Board of Education and integrating of the schools, which you now benefit from, bitch? Where the fuck were they at? I ain't see no Asian delegation. I ain't see no Asian standing next to Thurgood Marshall talking about we've defeated the system of white supremacy and we're now integrating the schools so that black people who are more than qualified but who were previously denied for no other purpose than the color of their skin can now go and attend these universities. Fuck out of here, bitch. Shit burns me up. You know what I'm saying? Like again, Like, we understand that there's nuance to all these problems. It's not just like this one size fits all situation. As when we want to talk about race relations and tribalism and group economics and white supremacy and all that shit. It's not just you just come in the room and say, fist in the air, say some pro-black shit, and that's all there is. And it's not like other groups of people don't have their fucking grievances. But when these other groups of people jump up and they want to cut the line on black people, that's when I got a problem with you. Okay, like I said, and I started this video off with, Asian Americans need to have a seat, many seats. Have a seat. Sitting there talking about what you feel you deserve and shit. You ain't suffer all but 5 minutes. Black people been suffering for 400, damn near 400 years, and we got to sit there and listen to y'all, sit there and talk about, and we can't tolerate this suffering. Y'all eating good, y'all living good, y'all like white women bitching about being oppressed and shit. I'm like, bitch, you sleep next to power. Fuck out of here. I'm a white woman and I feel I need reparations. So let me get this right. So the man that you sleep next to, what are you gonna do? Go in his back pocket, and then when you go in bed at night, you're gonna put the money back in his back pocket, right? Because y'all a team, right? Y'all a team, remember? But I'm a white woman and I feel oppressed. That's what it sounds like when I hear Asians fucking bitching. I'm not saying Asian Americans haven't been discriminated against. You know what I'm saying? But Asian Americans, they quietly, ran the sub, low and ran it deep, while black people were the ones that were on the front lines taking the brunt of all the drama and the bullshit. And not even so much as a thank you, just straight up, just out there, we have the same situation as y'all black people, y'all just don't do, we're being discriminated against because of y'all. I didn't get into college because of you all. Motherfucker, you wouldn't even be in this college if it wasn't for black people marching and protesting and filing lawsuits so that you could go to this predominantly white institution. Fuck out of here. Oh, they burn me up with that bullshit. They burn me up with their fake, phony ass, self-righteous indignation. You know what I'm saying? Like as though they've been wronged. Like, fuck out of here. And to sit there, I'm not trying to sit here and have the oppression Olympics, but seriously speaking, like, how dare you? You know what I'm saying? Black people been here since the 1600s. These motherfuckers came here in the goddamn 80s and shit. And got the nerve to sit there and talk some shit about what they feel that they deserve. They are first and second generation, and they sitting here, with their hand out. You know what I'm saying? Ain't shed no blood, sweat, and tears like black people, but got their hand out and got the audacity to cut to the front of the goddamn line. I'm like, ain't this a bitch? Ain't this a bitch? I think you need to have a seat. Anyway, that's my rant. SWP out.